This video will explore some of the key aspects of representative democracy. We have seen that direct democracy poses issues relating to the organisation of the voting process, particularly in countries with large populations. In contrast, representative democracy is comparatively simple to organise. This makes this type of democracy more realistic, and even though the people cannot vote directly on every issue, they are able to express their voice by selecting a representative that they feel best fits their ideas about society, the economy, international issues, and the environment, for example. In the UK, general elections are usually held every 5 years. The Fixed Term Parliament Act of 2011 was created to ensure that from 2015, the Prime Minister could not decide upon a date for a general election that worked to his or her advantage. The Act ensures that the Parliament is dissolved automatically after 5 years. Before the Act, dissolution was a personal prerogative or right of the monarch. Parliament is now dissolved automatically 25 working days before a general election. Under the Act, the next general election is expected to take place on Thursday the 2nd of May 2024. The Act also allows elections to be called before the 5-year maximum time threshold. This can be as a result of a motion of no confidence in the government by a simple majority, or if a motion for a general election is agreed by 2/3 of the total number of seats in the House of Commons. Currently, this would be 434 out of 650. In April 2017, Prime Minister Theresa May announced her intention to call a general election for the 8th of June 2017. This meant that this Parliament would come to an end after 2 years and 32 days. This motion was voted upon in Parliament and passed. This Act is an important piece of legislation which in theory would limit the Prime Minister's ability to call an early election. However, in practice, Prime Ministers have been able to circumvent this law. In 2019, Prime Minister Boris Johnson tried and failed to call an early general election. He was able to push forward with his intention by passing the Early Parliamentary General Election Act 2019. He called for a vote in Parliament. A simple majority of MPs was needed for this bill to pass and become an act, and therefore a new law. The Commons approved the bill by a vote of 438 to 20. The Early Parliamentary General Election Act of 2019 was introduced on the 29th of October 2019 and approved by MPs, Lords, and received royal assent. From introduction of the bill to the creation of the new law took just 3 days. The Act stated that a general election would take place on the 12th of December 2019. What is significant about this is that Boris Johnson was blocked by the 2011 Act and so simply created a new Act in order to circumvent the barriers he faced in calling a general election. In the UK, Parliament makes the laws. Parliament is made up of the House of Commons and the House of Lords. This is the legislative body, the law-making body in the UK. Parliament is able to make the laws because of the British constitutional principle of parliamentary sovereignty that has the right to make or unmake any law whatever. Because Boris Johnson's Conservative Party had the majority of seats in the House of Commons, a simple majority was relatively easy to achieve. In this context, it would be quite straightforward for a Prime Minister or other MP to introduce a motion or bill to change or introduce a new law. This is clearly open to abuse, as politicians could rush through legislation without sufficient scrutiny or discussion by the media and the people. On the 28th of August 2019, the UK Parliament was ordered to be prorogued by Queen Elizabeth II upon the advice of Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Prorogation in this context means the suspension of Parliament. Boris Johnson called for the prorogation of Parliament from between the 9th and 12th of September until the 14th of October 2019. The timing of this order was interesting given that when Parliament was to reconvene, it would be just 17 days before the UK's scheduled departure from the EU, the 31st of October 2019. Critics of Boris Johnson were outraged as they felt that he wanted to remove MPs and their scrutiny of the government's Brexit plans. A legal appeal was mounted and heard in the Court of Session, Scotland's Supreme Civil Court. The judges ruled that the prorogation was unlawful. The legal case was then heard in the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, which also ruled on the 24th of September that prorogation was unlawful. On the 25th of September 2019, Parliament resumed. What is significant is that the case against the government was brought about by a number of individuals, many of whom were political representatives, notably Joanna Cherry, SNP MP. This is important because it shows how political representatives can scrutinise the actions of government on behalf of the people. Such scrutiny would be very difficult to launch on this scale in a direct democracy. That said, Boris Johnson is also a political representative. He has been MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip since 2015 and was declared by the UK's final Court of Appeal to have acted unlawfully. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon declared Boris Johnson to be akin to a tin-pot dictator for his actions that were orchestrated by his senior political advisor Dominic Cummings. The example from the UK in relation to the prorogation of Parliament shows how political representatives can act beyond the scope of their powers and, in Boris Johnson's case, act unlawfully. The prorogation of Parliament was not in the interest of the people because the representatives elected by the people could not hold the government to account on behalf of their constituents. In this respect, representative democracy can help to enhance legitimacy and democracy by scrutinising political leaders to ensure that they do not act unlawfully. Another example of a dark day of democracy in a representative system can be seen in El Salvador. President Bukele was democratically elected in February 2019 as a candidate representing the centre-right Grand Alliance for National Unity Party. In his first speech to the United Nations General Assembly in September 2019, Bukele asked the audience to wait while he took a selfie. He later claimed that this would have more impact than his prepared remarks. In February 2020, Bukele demanded that his request for a $109 million loan to better equip police and soldiers was approved by the National Assembly. Higher spending on law enforcement is important, according to Bukele, in order to cut the murder rate in El Salvador, which is comparable to a country that is at war. Heavily armed troops of the Salvadoran army marched into the National Assembly on the orders of Bukele to pressurize the country's lawmakers. Bukele then invoked Article 167 of El Salvador's constitution to convene an extraordinary session to endorse his deal. Legal experts comment that Article 167 can only be used in an emergency such as a natural disaster and not at the president's bidding. Some legislators or ministers refused to attend subsequent sessions in the National Assembly, so Bukele ordered soldiers armed with automatic weapons to the homes of the absent legislators to order them to appear. Writing in the Miami Herald in February 2020, Bukele claimed that the loan is an important step in taking back control of our country. In this article, Bukele accused legislators of financing terrorist groups or gangs. Bukele's critics have accused him of authoritarian actions by using the military to intimidate political representatives and by using excessive force in order to push forward his financial demands. In this respect, his critics see him as asserting his democratic power with dictatorial force. Despotism, it seems, has emerged from democracy. The Washington Post condemned Bukele's actions as an alarming violation of democratic norms. El Faro news agency, now barred from official press conferences by Bukele, reported that he is showboating, populist, anti-democratic and authoritarian. Claiming he has God on his side, he turned over a dark page in the history of our young democracy. In some respects, Bukele could be seen to be abusing his power and not representing the people or allowing scrutiny by political representatives. The fact that he has been investigated by the El Salvadoran Attorney General for money laundering, corruption and bribery has tarnished his reputation. That said, Bukele has a 90% approval rating, perhaps because he has reduced the murder rate in El Salvador. He is defended by some as a protector, not dictator of the people, and therefore his actions have legitimacy and authority. Commentators have pointed to the fact that the representatives in El Salvador have not denied the loan. They are considering it and have asked for further time and information to scrutinise it. They are also questioning why, in Bukele's request for the loan, $30 million is listed as being required for the purchase of a ship to help fight gang violence, which seems odd since gang violence in El Salvador is predominantly street-based. The President cannot order the legislature or the National Assembly to act because he is prevented from doing so by the democratic law of separation of powers. The existence of political representatives in a representative democracy can therefore provide a valuable buffer between a leader and their pursuit of excessive power. In representative democracies, representatives are professional politicians. They devote their careers to the representation of their constituents. Often these representatives have extensive experience in a particular field, law, energy, or health, for example. They may be well respected in their constituency for helping local people with issues relevant to the community, job creation or education, for example. In the UK context, MPs have opportunities each Wednesday lunchtime to scrutinise the Prime Minister during Prime Minister's questions. They often refer to issues relating to their local context. An example of this was when in March 2020, Tulip Siddiq, Labour MP for Hampstead and Kilburn, asked government ministers about her constituent Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, who was imprisoned in Iran in an institution with COVID-19. Tulip Siddiq demanded to know what the UK government was going to do to protect the health of this British citizen abroad. Mrs. Zaghari-Ratcliffe was imprisoned in Iran for plotting to topple the Iranian government, a charge she has always denied. She was released temporarily in March 2020 as a result of the global pandemic and is awaiting a pardon. An MP can also raise the profile of an issue in the media and will hold regular surgeries in order to listen to the issues facing constituents. This includes all constituents, not just those that voted for them. MPs may disagree with the views of their constituents. The MP has to balance the views of the people they represent, the policies of the party of which they're a member, and perhaps their own personally held beliefs about religion, for example. This, of course, would not be an issue in a direct democracy where each constituent would represent their views directly. Therefore, it may be argued that political representatives may not always represent fully the people that they are representing, because not all constituents will have voted for them, and because they have to be guided by the manifestos of their political parties and their own personal preferences. Our next video lesson will examine the key advantages and disadvantages of representative democracy by considering the aspects of practicality, accountability, representation, and participation.